We are ready to start. I will briefly introduce the chair, which is busy coordinating the last step before getting started himself. And I'm talking about Dr. Gregory Alegi, which is a member of the section Roma Due Broglio. But on top of this, maybe even more important, he is a professor and historian and knows very well wheeling dealings of the Italian Air Force and much more. So I'll pass on to him the lead in the roundtable subject, as you might have noticed, is promoting synergies and cooperation nationally, internationally. Please, Gregory, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this is a difficult time. We're all trying to digest our excellent lunch, and I remember I had a Chinese literature course just after lunch at university, and it was very difficult. And it was also a very small class, so when I fell asleep, the professor saw me, and that was very bad. So I usually say at this point that I try to interpret my role not to moderate, but to stimulate. Otherwise, I don't want to help anyone fall asleep. So I'm very honored to be here and to be able to chair this panel at this interesting conference. And we have a very distinguished panel. We have some of our speakers, but also some new entries. So we have at my right and left Alan Paul with 2 L's, not 4. And we have Nina Voivodenko at my left, and then we have Mr. Marini from Cira, and then we have General Russo also from Cira, and
from Dott.
From Dott. He's moved from Dott. When you're a historian, you tend to remember old information up to date. And then Colonel Soldani, which gave us the excellent presentation on Italian Air Force interest in space. So, with this very diverse panel, we'll try to look at synergies and cooperation. I will start with this, which is the reasons to cooperate, and that is time and money. So I would like to start with that general question. If anybody wants to start the ball rolling, what time frames are we looking at, and how much money do we talk about to get something, let's say, practical, not just a flight test or something. Whether it's military practical, commercial practical, but a product, something which is of general interest and not just of specialist interest. Yes, thank you for jumping into the breach.
So thank you very much for this question. The only thing that I can say is just a small results of a small, let's say, study we did up to now. Talking about a small, let's say, 6-passenger plus 2 pilots hypersonic airplane. According to the analysis we did, the cost of the development up to the certification of the vehicle, according to the actual law, of course, and regulation, would be in the order of 2 billion. In the order of 2 billion, so this is classical, ordinary investment for almost all let's say, middle-sized airplanes at industrial level. Then
over what time?
It depends on which kind of technology you want to implement. We believe that there is the possibility, it's not a must, there is a possibility to use many already available technologies, or let's say technology which have today a TRL very high, relatively high. So having infinite resources, so forget about money. We believe that 4 to 5 years could be possible. Could be. Of course, it's a dream, maybe.
So, does that, and I would ask Nina, move to another part of the world. Do you think that 5 years is a reasonable time money is different because, of course, in each system costs are calculated differently, but time is a more universal measure of problem. Do you think 5 years is a reasonable time?
I'm not so optimistic. I believe that to make hypersonic passenger flight, it's much more time is necessary. 5 years is not enough. First of all is engine. Reliably working engine. This is a big problem. And about cost of that, also I suppose that much more money is unnecessary to develop this. I can't estimate exactly because I'm not an economist.
Right.
I'm scientist, but I understand how deep is the problem of is a technical problem, and I suppose it's much more money, much more time.
And I saw our friend at the left, Marili, again shaking his head, a bit skeptical.
No. As Mr. Russo said, if we use
Thank you. My point of view is the following. As General Russo said, if you use some critical technologies already available or at high level of readiness, technology readiness, I make an example. Thermal protection for leading gauges of the wing, or engines that are more similar to conventional turbojet, for instance, the turbo ramjet. Okay, these times probably could be feasible in the sense that, okay, propulsion is the main challenge of this kind of flight. So for a small plane, maybe 5 to 10 years could be feasible from my point of view. For a larger plane, as we described it in these 2 days as Exafly International, in which Russia, Alegi, and also Chile is part of the European project, of course, times are much larger in the sense that, again, the critical technology of propulsion goes toward different combined systems. Advanced turbojet for takeoff and maybe for landing, but an acceleration obtained with ramjet and scramjet engine to achieve the cruise at stratospheric flight. In that respect, of course, the technology is still, let's say, midway, in the middle of the way to reach a product, as you said at the beginning, Gregory, to have something that is can be exploited by the human being. We are far from the result, so at least 20-30 years, in my opinion. I don't know if Nina agrees about this point.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. At least this is our experience, having participated since 15 years, 10 to 15 years to this kind of project, from East and from East Europe.
I would ask Alan, because he was telling me last night or earlier that he's already TRL-6, and so he probably has an idea of what has been done and what remains to be done in practical engineering terms to achieve the product. And then I'll go to the only user at the table, the only representative of a user at the table, to see what they think. But first, over to Alan.
Well, I think for starters, there's 2 time frames you're looking at. One is for a commercial flight, you know, range to Sydney, 5 seconds or whatever it is. And you've got the other one which is going to drive all of this, and it's the military application. So, you know, it's pretty clear when you read Aviation Week and all that, that they're already flying, well, the X-51, we all know about X-51, they're flying engines, and they understand aerodynamics up to about Mark 5, which is what we're talking about. So, timeframes, I think, you know, you might, the boat might have sailed, because I think that there's stuff going around, there's stuff flying around now in both the West and the East. So it's probably not fielded in the as an actual threat, but it's obviously very close. So I would say that what you've got to do in Europe, if you really want to fly, you know, commercial aircraft or something like that, you're going to either have to take the lessons from these nations, which are probably not going to give them to you. So you're going to have to learn them yourself. And you might want to follow, maybe not producing an inherent weapon, but following the same process of trying to make small vehicles fly as a practice ground for our young people. It's all right for us old people to be having great coloured slides and everything like that. But what inspires the young people, I don't think it's PowerPoint. I think it's the fact that they've got something they're building, and they obviously can't build an aircraft 400 metres long. They need to build an aircraft 4 metres long or 2 metres long, and do all those basics so as that when we really get to the point that we understand it, and that'll take about 10 years if you don't do it by study by committee and PowerPoint, if you actually get your hands dirty, and if you have a little bit of competition. One of the things that we had was no competition, and we didn't know where we stood. But we were 14 people, and in a very small nation, and you know, why would Australia have Hypersonic? Come on, let's even think about that. But you're in a nation, you know, the European nation, let's call it a nation. You are in a position to have multiple groups with multiple approaches, and you know, you got a lot. You actually do have a lot of funding. You just might not be spending it the way you possibly think you are, in the sense that you're trying to do the right thing. But I really think, how many flights do I see in Europe? It's not many. If I could do 14 out of Australia, I think you could do one. You know, and I've tried to help Maraba get access to various ranges and provide them with information that they need. And I think there's a lot of collaboration that can be with something like Australia, and even in the US, and even in Russia, and even in China. I think there's a lot of places there that there's so much unclassified work going on that allows you and allows the people that we're trying to encourage here to actually have a go at something. And I do emphasise when we come to the money that for €2 million, you can have a flight in 2 years. So why can't you put €20 million and have 10 flights in 2 years with 10 different groups, just as an example? Anyway, that's my opinion.
Now, I asked this question at the previous symposium 2 years ago at a two-star general, I think he was then. And since he was a general, he did not answer. He was smart. Now let's see if I can trick you into answering. But a very interesting presentation. When does the Italian Air Force think that those things will come into line? Right now, they're, say, it's a broad new field we're opening. We're looking at suborbitals, stratospheric platforms. When do we think that the technologies for this will mature from the user's perspective, not so much from the researcher's perspective?
If we talk about suborbital flight, I believe the technology is still there, and we as Italian Air Force, we should be ready even before the first commercial flight will be going on. The first suborbital vehicle will be flying over our heads, and so we should be ready again, both initially at least for controlling and monitoring, and then for intervening as well. That's why we are really looking forward to start collaboration, because it's keyword currently. This collaboration will be with industry. Actually, we are going to acquire information, gathering information and experience with the suborbital flight operated by Alegi Galactic, bring this experience here in Italy, and eventually stimulate both from user perspective but also from industry perspective and as well, simulate this kind of market business from commercial point of view and air defense, so for military perspective as well. So we need to be ready, and not just with the suborbital vehicle, we need a ground segment ready as well, so controlling, monitoring. I believe due to the speed, it's not possible to limit this just to Italy. This is my personal opinion. We need to extend this collaboration at the European level. There are a number of initiatives, not big number for suborbital flight, to be sure, neither for the hypersonic flight, but if I'm going to see something in the future, this cannot be without the European Union umbrella.
Thank you. You must be studying to become a general because you did not say a number of years. But let's move to cooperation, which has been coming up. Cooperation, and the title here says international, nationally, but on which model? And we're throwing around a few ideas over lunch, but the basic question is, how do you cooperate? Do you have, let's say, a lead nation with others participating? Is it shared across the board? Does each country cooperate based on an existing specialty, or do we try to grow everyone to have knowledge across? And in more conventional fields, all of these approaches have been tried, and we've seen the merits and the limits of each. And sometimes in terms of intellectual property, sometimes in actual export of physical bits and pieces. You discover that when you do something together, then someone in the club decides that they're not going to give you 5 screws, you cannot export a complete airplane. So, how do we think we could proceed to cooperate to find the 2 billion or even just the 20 million for a trial shot? Which model do you think would work best to share the work and the IP? And I'll start this time with Gennaro Russo again, since he volunteered before. He made that mistake. I will volunteer now.
No problem, really. I want to say 2 things. Allow me to spend 1 minute on the previous question, on the previous discussion, because there is one specific topic that is very critical for, at least for the commercial side, that is risk associated with. And there are, of course, we know that there is no database, there's no experience, so it is a matter of defining, let's say, new rules at the end to accept the existence of commercial aircraft. This is a big issue because there is no experience, no database. So how can we imagine how many accidents can we accept? We cannot simply use the aeronautical data, I believe. So this is just in brackets.
As a historian, I don't find that a very valid objection, because in 1919, so exactly 100 years ago, a bunch of people who had only been shooting at each other in World War I came up with China, which was not the country, but the International Convention on Aerial Navigation, which set up all the rules for commercial flight at the time when there wasn't a single commercial aircraft. They set up all the principles which allowed registration, insurance, and so on, and allowed the preconditions. And honestly, commercial flying was not technically viable for another 10 years and not economically viable for another 20 years. So the fact that there are no rules doesn't need to be an obstacle. I mean, it just takes people around the table to decide what they are, and then you will modify them, but having rules provides the scheme to go ahead. Without insurance, airlines would have never started, because as you were saying, you define the risk, in some way, and then that becomes a project. But sorry for the interruption.
No,
Go on.
That's true. That's true, and I fully support this approach. But we have to convince the people or the authorities that have to accept this. Well, it's not so easy. But anyway, let's come back to the other point. You say you are here trying to stimulate. I would reply being provocative, in the sense that, but we are talking about hypersonic. Hypersonic is a big word. A big word. There's everything inside, or many things at least. So it's making a parallel with automotive. You are asking me, in this case, where and how we can cooperate internationally on automotive. And then the answer is, are we talking about car, trucks? We are starting from the same level. I have the engine, you have the wheel. So what we have, which is the situation? So what I want to say, coming back to our team, is that first of all we have to define which is the target, which is the matter, the subject. And we are talking about military weapon. I don't know. I cannot answer, but maybe it is less easy to have a cooperation or very open cooperation at least. If we talk about commercial airplane, it is more easy, but it depends on industry, because 2 billion euros, if it is the right number, must be found by an industry, not by a government. Industries must go around among their potential customer, try to see the budget case, the business case, and then decide. Sometimes with some support from the governments, but essentially it is a fully commercial approach. So, and certainly up to now, aeronautics has been, let's say, international, and this kind of field will be international for sure. So, if you come to me on this point, the cooperation would be or should be fully commercial, of commercial type.
Thank you. Let's round the same way. We go back to Nina. How do you see development working? And it's an interesting perspective because East-West remains a difference in cultures and in approaches. So it'd be very interesting to hear how you look at the opportunities for cooperation, maybe even based on the experience of about 20-25 years of attempted cooperation with mixed results. Some good, some less good, and some which didn't start.
Okay, first of all, to realize really passenger flights, it is necessary to solve few fundamental problems which are not solved yet. One of them is the heating. Imagine that you have created the aircraft, Hexafly, for example, which fly from Europe to Australia during 3.5 hours approximately, with Mach number 8. This aircraft envelope will be heated to approximately 800–1000 degrees, 13 degrees. And even you create the very good protection of the passengers who are inside this aircraft, when this aircraft will be landed in Sydney, its temperature envelope will be 10,000 degrees, 1,000 degrees approximately. How can people go out? They should wait till the moment well the temperature will be normal for them. It's only one problem which we should solve. And such fundamental problems, we have a lot of such fundamental problems because in our flights, passenger flights, we participate not very good trained professional military pilots who can be in special suits and so on. It will be real passengers with their illness, with their operation, so and they should stay alive during this flight.
That would be a good idea.
Yes. So there are some fundamental problems which must be solved because before passengers start to fly with hypersonic velocities. This problem could be solved only in the world cooperation. It will not be solved by some particular company or by even some country, I think. And it's good for such field for such cooperation. And an example of it is, for example, Hexafly project which we participate in. Very successfully. I had a big pleasure to work with our colleagues from Europe, from Australia, and so on. This is my opinion. Fundamental problem could be solved only in the world cooperation.
Okay, Professor Alegi,
Yeah.
which kind of cooperation? Because cooperation is clearly necessary with such a large problem, but how, along which model, and then what happens to the results? Who owns them, who can use them?
As Nina said, when we stay within the, let's say, the solving of such fundamental problems, probably the cooperation and synergy model that we are applying in Europe and in Russia is good. So, let's say an institution as the European Commission that funds some fundamental studies up to medium technology readiness level. But there is a discriminant at a given point when we have to move to the product. I agree with Rino. At a given point of the story, we need industries, big industries, and at that point, let's say, what we need are political decisions, government decisions, big budgets. So it's much more difficult. Let's say the realization of the product and let's say the commercialization of the product is much more difficult. So for the first phase, for me, for my opinion, the model of cooperation given by the European project would be okay. Not for the second part. For the let's say the manufacturing, let's say the second phase up to the airliners, let's say, the governments must enter into the business because the budgets we are speaking about are very, very large as cost of development, maintenance, renew of infrastructures, because we are speaking also about vehicles that use, I don't know, liquid hydrogen as fuel. So you pose some concerns about airports, spaceports, infrastructure, safety, storage, and so on. It's a big problem, and last but not least, the problem of regulations. With these flights, we are exploring a part of space that is uncovered, let's say. Okay, from the point of view of general principle, as ideas has been also fixed, but in effect, if we go beyond 20 kilometers probably up to the space, it's a black sea, let's say. I want to add another point that is also a discriminant point. As the lieutenant is okay. As you said, the problem of the problem. Let's say if the manned or unmanned characteristic of the vehicle is very important, also for the cost of development. If we have human beings on board, we can face with the problems that Nina has described. If we are speaking about an unmanned missile, as that you colleagues described today, okay, we are following another path. Okay, there we need time to target, penetration on defense, transparent to radar, and so on. Okay, so there are very two different words in hypersonic. As Rino said, hypersonic is a lot of things, from re-entry, from capsule to vehicles. So again, I repeat, for feasibility study up to preliminary design, probably the model, it's our experience. The model offered by the cooperation by means of European projects or side projects from international cooperation as Russia, Europe, and so on, is okay. For a second phase, we need industries.
Thank you. Somehow I am skeptical about governments pouring huge amounts of money into hypersonic flight to carry less than this room to less than this room to Australia. I don't see it happening. The historical trajectory of air transport has been lowering unit costs rather than high speed. That dream died with Concorde. Concorde lost the 747, which means that Alan is right, that it's going to be the X-51 and it's going to be the military side driving development, and then at some point that technology is going to migrate to the civil side once it's being matured. What do you think?
Yeah, as it always does. But I've heard all the problems. Sorry.
But that will then pose the problem of how to share it. Well, because if it's military, they're less willing, let's say.
Yeah. Look, I've heard all the problems, and it's great. But the one thing you're not looking for is the solution, and the solution's in this room. You saw it today. See those two guys up there? What did you do? You collaborated. There's three over here, a young lady and two young guys. I watch them. They collaborate with each other. And how did you collaborate? Well, why did you collaborate? Because you were mates. You enjoyed each other's company. I dare say you had a drink with each other. Probably got drunk with each other. No discretion on you. The point is, collaboration is not borne out by a forced marriage. Collaboration in a new field, in a field like this where you're pushing the boundaries, where nothing goes the way you expect it to go, comes out through, you got bad times and you got good times. And the only way you can get through that is when you've got people you can trust beside you. And, I'm looking from Europe from a long way away. And, you can look from Australia from a long way away and just see just see that we have a Prime Minister every 5 minutes, sort of thing. But the point is, you can see something a little bit more clearly. And I think what I'm seeing here is that you can't see the real problem, and you can't see the way out of it. And you're thinking these big projects, and then you're talking, yes, getting close, and you're saying it's the young people. Well, give the young people a go, and let them collaborate amongst themselves. We can give them guidance. We can give them coverage. So it's when it's there, and like when things go wrong, in Australia we have a different saying. When things go wrong, we take the blame, right? But let the young guys have a go, and give them the money, because that's where all the good ideas are going to come from, and they will collaborate. They have none of our history, and they will collaborate with the Germans and the French and so forth, because they're the one Europe. They will collaborate even with Australia, because they've probably gone and visited it and think, wow, that's a nice place. They haven't been parts of Australia I've been to. But what my point is, we've got to do the collaboration, and this is what I did. I didn't just collaborate with somebody, I collaborated with somebody I knew. And then he knew somebody, and we said, well, we can trust them. And we went together and we threw a bit of money in ourselves. And the IP, we said we'd share. Okay, then we got lawyers in and all that sort of stuff, and then they had to sort it out. But the engineers and the technical people just had the idea, the good idea. It was a common goal, very simple goals, and we were going to work together to make it happen no matter what. We were all over the world. So, if you're in Australia, distance is a problem, but we overcame that with a thing called the telephone. And it worked really well. I could ring up Europe in the evening, and I could ring up America in the morning. And that way we collaborated. And when we had a problem, any problem, a family problem, or a technical problem, or, you know, we got annoyed with each other, we got on the phone and had a good conversation. And every now and then we'd go and visit each other every 6 months. We'd all do whatever we wanted. There was a bit of work involved, I admit. But we learned to trust, and we learned to use each other's resources without any hesitation about, oh, are you going to pinch my stuff or not? I don't know whether you're going to pinch my stuff. You might turn into a crazy person. I don't know, but at the time I trust you. And if it all goes bad at the end, well, that's the way life is, you know. 50% of marriages fall apart. You know, that's just the way it is. I'm not going to sit around and worry about that. So all these problems are up front, but the best thing is if you want to collaborate, make sure you've got a good friend. And then they've probably got good friends, and then from there, let the lawyers look after the other stuff, and then the money will flow. But don't, you know, in my opinion, if I'd gone for a $400 million project, guess who would have talked to me, you know? No one. You've got to go with something that's realistic in your system. And if you're worrying about where you're going to get $2 billion from, or €2 billion, you know, you're probably in trouble. You know, what I did was I knew what I wanted to do, but I knew that I had to do stepping stones, but they were really quite below the radar. And when things went wrong, I had a whole bunch of collaborators and friends to help me out. And you know, I needed help at times, and so did they. So anyway, it's all about good relationships and being able to trust the other person and giving the young guys a go. We've had our chance. Give them a go, right? And just give them the cover, because they're going to make mistakes, and if they don't make mistakes, they're not doing their job. They're really not doing their job. You know, I blew up rockets on a launch pad, you know, and my boss would tell me, was it good or bad, Alan? I go, well, no one died. God, that's good. Tick. And he'd do all the rest and keep me, he just say, keep going, keep going. Yeah, you don't do it too many times, but we've just got to collaborate at two different levels. That's probably what I'm getting at. We've got to collaborate at our level, and the young guys, we've got to let them collaborate, and we've got to feed them money. That's why I've been.
I think that the collaboration with everyone at all levels and with, let's say, the resources available is very much what the Air Force the Italian Air Force has been started doing recently, signing agreements for air launching of satellites in December, now launching an RFI for a stratospheric platform, talking to Virgin Galactic to finally place one of his colleagues in space, at least the lower part of space, and so on. So certainly a low, step-by-step, but even opportunistic in some ways approach is being followed. But
hello? Yeah, I think. Okay. Look, you saw it today. We had two young guys sit up there and say one of the biggest problems is defence against hypersonic incoming weapons. I went up and asked him and said, okay, thank you very much, what's your solution? He had a solution. Let him have a crack at it. Come on, let him have a go. No one else thinks we've got a solution, let him have a go. And because he believes in it, he will overcome all those problems, and he doesn't give a stuff about the political situation. He just is a good young guy, and he's just going to go for it. And that's exactly what you want. I'm sorry, that's, yeah, I'll go home soon.
Well, I agree he's a good guy. He was one of my students. They both were. So I know they're good guys. I probably gave him a good grade. So
give him some money.
well, that's not my department, but that might be the space officer's department. But I said, how do we look to cooperation in a largely, or at least in the purely military part? Because a lot of those technologies and approaches, not the concepts, but the actual approaches will be governed by considerations of classification and of, let's say, national interest. So how can we cooperate there? And if the only solution is international, where do we get the political will to go at the supranational level at this point in time?
As anticipated this morning, the General Office for Space is bringing on a number of initiatives which require, in this case, collaboration. We can distinguish in type of collaboration. First of all, we have what's so-called public-private partnership, so involving industries into the development of projects. Other kind of collaboration are, for sure, trying synergies with further institutions such as Italian Space Agency or for another project. Just to make practical example, at launch we are actually just providing a phase study, feasibility study, technical and affordability economical study. These initiatives comes along institution, Italian Air Force, institution in the academy, so research center, National Research Committee, universities, a number of universities, including roles, Padua University as well, collaborating, and a number of industries as well. We have 26 organizations which are willing to cooperate to bring on this initiative, which is very, very it's very high objective, very difficult. It's a very ambitious initiative. Develop or at least see whether a launcher for airplane, satellite launcher from airplane base is feasible. This kind of type of launcher for nano satellites, which represent one of the potential technical solutions available. This initiative is really unique because all these organizations are collaborating without any funding, providing their own, it's a study, so it's just their own resources, manpower mainly at this point in time, looking for potential initiative, potential production or developing in the future. That's one of that. Another kind of similar cooperation is for the stratospheric platform. We are collecting, we had a workshop last April where we collected the industry in the sector. We are trying to get one unique voice for Italy and to go in Europe with the same voice. And this is very important, achieving this kind of synergies from institutions and industries as well. We have collaboration with other partners. We can take as an example the SST, so the Space Surveillance and Tracking. That's a very good example of collaboration, both in European, from the European point of view. We are providing services to the European SST framework, but also at multinational level. We are exercising the spaces wide field, not just military involved, but also civilian. Yes, European SST is civilian, and we as military are cooperating with ASI and INA in this track. But also outside Europe, we are cooperating with the US STRATCOM, we are cooperating with JAXA, we are cooperating with Australia. They are also involved in the exercise promoted by the US STRATCOM for this initiative, which is sensing what is around, sensing which will be common problems, debris, for instance, for our space-based systems. And this kind of collaboration, again, it's both from, maybe it's pushed by institutions, but of course it needs to be extended as much as possible.
Thank you. I think we had a good round, and we're about to talk strategy, which is going to be fascinating. Actually, we'll divide the room in two teams and pit one side against the other to see how it works out. But I would like to thank all the panelists for their contributions and for making it possible to keep this whole thing lively and going. I would like to end up, since we were speaking about air transport, one of the great innovative thinkers of air transport, which is Herb Kelleher, who ran Southwest for many years. And he famously once said, you know, when they talk to you about the common sense solution, well, if it's a solution, it probably isn't common sense. And if it's common sense, it's probably not a solution. So I think that we will have to do a lot of hard thinking to make this work and to bring these very different perspectives into a synergy, into a coherent whole, and make it work some way or another. So with that thought of thinking out of the box with the young people over there, I close this panel and hand over to my friend Vittorio Argento to moderate the next one. Thank you, gentlemen, for your cooperation. Thank you.